I am I completely share, and I have, listening to these previous presentations, I just would like to go on with the design and children and the way they use space. And well, I will go on with that a little bit, but I also have to go to some of the constraints that we have when designing. We have to consider also our social, economical environment, and what constraints or what do we have to consider when we are designing. It's not just free. Being creative, I always say, being creative is not only do whatever we want. It's also to be able to create out of constraints, or what of conditions, of preconditioning. What do you have, and how can you create great areas, starting with some constraints. That is also being creative when you design. So I would like to show you just to start with a little, you know, those YouTube movies that sometimes make us laugh, but also show us what are... This is all part of play, right? And we all like to play, adults, children, all together with our children. Oof. And these are fun accidents that we think, okay, that's so funny. And we cannot see how those constraints that I was talking about, like laws and standards, how can they help us? What do they do? How do they help us? Not, because here there's not big consequences, but they could have. There are things here, even if they were not following standards consciously, but there were some design features here that have helped not having a serious injury also. This one, for instance, followed the standard. Whoops. But you follow the standard here, right? I really like this one. Look at how far he went with the child to be able to... And okay, these ones are fun. These ones are fun. In this video we saw there was some space available so they could run and fall safely, okay? But sometimes we have very serious accidents. And with design already, we saw in the other one we had some space, free space at the end of the slide, for instance. And so the father could run with the child, and he could fall on a flat surface. But here, for instance, when you choose equipment already, when your design process, you are making a choice that will have influence on inspection and maintenance, or you are choosing equipment with a higher risk or not. And you can do anything. You can choose whatever you want, but you just have to be aware of what you are choosing. And at design stage, you are already making choices that will have an influence of the type of activities and the type of risk level that there will be. For instance, in this case, it was an accident in Spain with the equipment complying with the standard certification, with certificates, and what happened probably had to do with something with a bad installation and then lack of inspection and maintenance. But this was at the design stage, when you choose one post equipment, which is an equipment that relies on one post only for stability. We know at the design stage that we are giving an opportunity, we are offering something where we will need more attention, more inspection, more maintenance. We know that, and the standards help us to know that. They tell us that. So it's good to know that you have at design stage, you are already having an influence on the overall challenging and safe area you are going to give, but it will have an influence on operation. At the design stage, it will have an influence. So what happens in Europe, for all Europe? We have, for playgrounds in general, we are talking these play areas that are with built environment. We have a European building regulation that is in force in every country with national building regulations, because it's permanent installation, so we are talking about doing some works to have a permanent installation with play areas. But then, for equipment, we also have the General Product Safety Directive, which says that all products in the market must be safe. And what is safe? for legally to be safe, it means that it will be, if it is used in an intended way or foreseeable way, and we are talking about children, so they will be very imaginative the way they will use it, it will not have an acceptable risk. And again, we will go into another concept, what is acceptable or not. But when we have, what the legislation says is that legally a product will be seen as safe, acceptable, if it follows some kind of standards, or if you can say how you had a risk assessment. Nicola spoke about this accident where you won because you had registers, you had records, you have proven that you follow, you have a risk assessment in place. And so the standards will help us with that, but it doesn't mean that you have to follow the standard. But you have to say, if you do not follow the standard, because the law doesn't oblige you to follow the standard, the European law, okay? It just tells you, okay, then tell us, how did you do your risk assessment? How do you control the safety of this area, okay? But what it also says that if you use standards, it's the easiest way for a safer, well, area or product, but not the area, because this is for products. The thing is that standards are voluntary technical references, but they're just mostly for the equipment or the product. But the products are used in combination. One thing is to produce an equipment at the factory, and in principle, it will be okay if you follow the standard, but then as soon as you install it, it can immediately stop following the standard. Immediately. There is a combination. There is an interaction between the environment and the users. And the behavior of users, of children, is not in the standard. So we know that children will use it in the most imaginative ways. Okay? Standards will be there and can help us choosing some kind of equipment, if we know also what they are addressing. But for layout, for instance, or organization, they only have recommendations, or they can have recommendations that are important. Okay? So what I'm showing here is a playground. We have a big area with of course, sand. And, of course, this equipment here, you can see the two on the top, there are two kids. And we'll see the way they are. The others are using it more or less how it is intended. But here they like, all the kids, they also like very much to be watching, under control, what's happening, right? So he will be up there. And the standard, they put up, for instance, a maximum height, for falling height for equipment. But if children want to climb higher, it's okay. Because standards will give you the minimums, just minimums, an idea. But this area, it's okay. Look how they circulate around, how they move from one equipment to the other, okay? And even the choice, the relationship between the several equipments, if there is an overlapping of like safety areas, we can be in trouble. Now he has moved to here. I don't know this guy. I don't know this kid. I mean, I was just watching. Okay, I didn't ask him to go there. But obviously, this is one of those kids that really likes to be on top. And here, with this fence they have put, they are helping also to get on top and to have access to other things, right? So here we just saw, like with the type of design we have and the choice of equipment we have, we can have different uses by different children. So the affordance of the space will determine how kids will use it. But if it's the standards here will not tell us that children will go on top of the equipment, and it's not a problem. But if they do, why can't we just be careful that on top he will not be trapped, or when he's going to jump out, because he may jump out, he will have risk perception. He will see there was sand on the floor. So why not jumping? I'm not worried that he will fall. In principle, he will not fall. A kid like this does not really fall. He is aware of himself. He knows what he's doing. He will choose which way to go down. And he can even jump, because he knows how it feels underneath. So it's very important that the environment gives good signs, good signals of what is safe or not. Kids are not crazy. They will evaluate, shall I jump or not? So what we cannot give them is misleading signals. That, I think we should not give them misleading signals. Of course there are misleading signals and they will learn, as long as they don't die. I mean, if they can learn from it, it's okay. But not, there are situations that we know can really lead to very complicated situations. So when we know they're going on top, they need space to jump. So when we are planning areas, sometimes we have the standards that guide us to know more or less for each activity how much space do we need to have as a minimum to safely enjoy the place, enjoy the activity. And that's how we can make use of in this area, it's a skate park, but it also has a playground. We have different activities. If you really put everything together, people will bump into each other. You need space for circulation. You also need to know, for instance, and I hope now this other one will go, when you watch the children, is it there? Oh, great. Just watch what will happen. They are going around, and now he's braking because the little girl said, stop, stop, stop. There was a 3-year-old, and the others are like 6, 7, or 8-year-old. She said, stop. So they stop, and now look until they stop completely moving. I just love this. I just love this because they could enjoy the dizziness. They are dizzy, but it's lovely. They know it. But they have free space and to enjoy it until the end without stumbling on a fence or whatever. So again here, okay, if you're a designer and you want to choose some kind of equipment, you will just want to know, okay, so if there are standards for this, what is the minimum I should allow for this enjoying this safely? And the standard will give you, again, the minimum. It will tell you, in this case, for instance, that we would need 2 meters free from obstacles. And that's the minimum. Of course, if it's more, it's even better or not, because then you can create other problems. But it's just a reference. And this can be good to know quickly. Someone has thought about it for you, and you can know quickly what to do. Here, it's another one, the same kind of thing, but here, the fence, we talked about it again. Why having a fence here? We have cars on the other side. On this side, there's nothing. It's a plaza. It could be completely designed. It's a free space. There are even plants. But for children in this area, for the little cage for children, is just rubber with a fence. But if you just go outside, it's a plaza, really nice, with even a garden with bushes. And I never understand why they do this. But by placing the fence so close, okay, the fence itself can cause problems because with the centrifugal force, if they fall or if they jump out of it, they need space, free space to go safely to enjoy the whole feature, right? One thing that is important here is also standards do not require fences. And even when they have sometimes recommendations, now in the new standard for playgrounds, for swings, for instance, that will be published next year, fences have caused so many problems and very serious injuries, fences near swings, that we don't have the flip chart, right? No. So the new standard will say that, you know, you have a free space, impact area near a swing, and the new standard has a recommendation saying that if you want to have a fence near a swing, it will have to be at least 1.5 meters away from the end of the impact area. Because fences have provoked skull fractures. In the UK, amputation of a leg, because when the child fell from the swing, his leg hit the fence, and you had to amputate from the knee down. Skull fractures. So fences are really can be very dangerous if they are too close to equipment. And the standards, they just give you a recommendation. They don't even tell you that, because standards, they do not really deal with layout. They give you minimums, but they don't deal with layout. And those minimums that they give you are for manufacturers that they have to tell you, designers, what are the minimums. So this information in standards is what manufacturers have to give for safe use of their equipment. It's not even what you have to do. But then, of course, if you don't follow the instructions of the manufacturer, the responsibility, it's up to you. But the responsibility of the manufacturer is to tell you what is the minimum area. Then it's up to you as a designer to decide what you want to do. But if you don't follow at least that minimum, and I tell you it's the minimum, because with standards, we work by consensus. And the manufacturers, and I work with many, many manufacturers. I didn't tell you, but I mean, I've been working with these standards for more than 20 years, and I represent the European consumer. So I work with all the countries in Europe, but also we have also worked with Australia. We compare with the American, and it's really interesting to see the different approaches to risk. But manufacturers, of course, they are not interested to give you big areas, because the more you need of area for each equipment, the less you sell. So we really get a consensus to the absolute minimums for safe use. So for designers, this is a very good hint and a very good reference. Okay, I don't sell standards, I promise you, but they can be very useful and interesting if you look at them. Okay, now for this as the final one, I just would like to show you this one in a school. So in this one, it's in a school, and if you look at those kids, they are going through the equipment path, okay? And this equipment is a big swing that moves like this, you see? Okay? And, of course, there are requirements for the swing. If it hits you, it will be, maybe it's not that nice, but it's so much fun. The kids love it. All together, they can play together. You can choose the speed, you can, I would like to show this one again. There is requirement for the swing, but then for the area, there is also a free space, but the way it has been positioned in that school makes those kids passing through the path. When it's not working, it's okay, but if they're moving and they just are used to go this way, and they pass through this is a design issue. It's not the equipment that is dangerous. It's because of the way it has been placed, it has created a risk. You see? Okay, so what I wanted to show with these small examples is that when you use the standards in a smart way, and when you know why and how using them as a good tool, they can really be helpful. They will not give you those spaces we have for the equipment, for instance, the minimum, they don't give you space for circulation. So once again, when you are placing different activities, and also like the skate park I showed you, you have skate park and you have a playgrounds for small kids, you really have to think how you're going to position both, so not to create even discomfort, because people, the way they use place is what the space communicates to them. But sometimes children are so focused on, I mean, the play equipment or the play item, they see that they run through, and they are not evaluating if there is, it's like going to a car, with the cars, okay? They don't always check if their ball is on the other side. They just run for the ball. They will not check if the swing is moving or if the cars are coming, okay? So all this talk is because there is also a big myth about standards, and especially among architects and designers, that standards are killing creativity. Because of standards, we cannot do anything. Because of standards, we cannot have challenge. And this is not true. I can assure you, I know the standards very, very well. I've been working with them. The first time I read those standards in '94. You can do a lot. You just have to understand what the requirements and what the recommendations represent in terms of how the children move, okay? So I think they can really be a very important tool for everyone. Because first of all, they support, I have to do this. They support the horizontal legislation, so you are on the safe side. That's one thing. But they are clearly a voluntary technical reference, except when in some countries, and I think it's the case in the Czech Republic, and it's the case in my country, in Portugal, that they are mandatory. That means that they are a mandatory reference, but it doesn't kill creativity again, okay? And the good thing with standards when you're designing is that it will help you to create what is the level of acceptable risk. Is this okay? They will help you to define, to make a decision, not black or white. Standards are not black or white most of the time. There are lots of gray zones. There are lots of gaps. And sometimes they even have problems. I sometimes say don't follow the standard in that sense. I work with developing standards and changing standards, okay? So there are ways to do it. If you report serious serious accident. Sometimes when we talk about it, we check an accident, we want to know if it was complying with the standard or not. Is it a problem with the standard? Was it a design problem? Was it a behavior problem? We have to know. And that's why when the courts are starting to understand also better all these dynamics, it's not so easy to just sue the municipality because the municipality doesn't know how to defend themselves, right? So in fact, they can help us. It's a part of the risk criteria. It's one tool, like one of the risk criteria we need to take a decision. They really can help reduce the number and the severity of serious injury that can arise through design and manufacture. What standards represent is that someone has done a risk assessment for us, and at least the basic first one. And that's quite helpful. Because when you do this basic risk assessment, and that's what we do at the technical committees, we look at serious injuries, serious accidents. Well, we did that in the first place. We look at properties and behaviors of materials, anthropometric data, so important. And we don't look just at small children or big children. We look at the whole range as soon as they have some mobility. So for some of you that know like the probes or what to use to check like dimensions, we think about children like 12 months old, but also 14-year-olds. And so that's why when you are with play spaces, all the equipment, skate parks, whatever, it can take adults. Okay? It's not weak equipment for children. It's in the public space, and it has to be used publicly and freely. So those standards will just, we also take into account the child development, that they will use it in imaginative ways. So we just give some minimums based on a hazard-based approach. We give some minimums to help you with your decisions. But of course, standards can be your enemies. They can cause us lots of problems. And in particular, when they are not well understood. So they are really misused, misinterpreted, or dismissed. And when I say misused, it's also because I know some people do business with this, that they go from school to school and say, oh, I have to make an inspection for you, because if you don't follow the standard, a child could die and then you'll be in serious trouble. And I know that this has happened, that people use the standard to threat or to put pressure on people. But that does not mean that it's just because the people don't know that they can believe in this, okay? Or the misinterpretation is that when you just read the standard, oh, I can assure you, if you just read it, you will not understand what is behind. If you don't see the dynamics, if you don't see the children, if you don't see what's happening, you can never do a good inspection without watching a space in use. Okay, so, and this mist is a new trend that is happening, that people say, oh, standards are really bad for children, so you don't even look at it. And we are having some new, very serious accidents in the UK, for instance, where people want to use natural play elements. So just take a piece of wood, put it on the ground, and then it falls on children. And you had a case, a fatal case, like in July 2015, because it doesn't follow any kind of standards. Not the good wood, not the good installation, and after a few, that's what it's been under investigation. It can be, what manufacturers have been telling me is, it's maintenance, but it's also installation. It has to do how it was anchored. The thing, I cannot say exactly for each one, but there's a chain of responsibilities. And again, it was one post-equipment. So at the beginning, we knew it would be equipment that would need more care, more surveillance, right? So sometimes national laws can turn standards into a problem when they take away the need to make risk assessment. Sometimes it can happen with legislation, but that's not the problem with the standard. It's the national legislation that can create problems. But then, of course, standards have benefits and gaps. Not everything is in there, okay? There are many, many gray zones, and that's why you really need to make risk assessment. You have to make a risk assessment means you have to take a decision, and you have to take the responsibility over that decision, okay? Standards are just a tool They do not forbid anything like materials or anything, but you have to think, you have to have experience and knowledge to make recommendations, to know about good practices, and to help people or to help yourself to take good decisions. Okay? So this is to finish. With standards, you can have whatever you want. Either the cage for children with a little fence and the carpet and the catalog equipment. It's very safe for the operator. Oh, it's safe. And it's safe for the political guy. He said, it looks good on the picture. He thinks it looks good on the picture. But it's the safe, what they call legally safe, which standards will allow. Standards will allow this, in principle, because standards on playground equipment do not apply to fences, for instance. But it also allows crazy playgrounds, lots of fun. You just have to know how to use it and how to choose the standards, because of course for this type of playgrounds, you are not using the playground equipment standard. You have to go for other standards for resistance of the cables. You have to look for other things. But you cannot use the standard as an excuse not to offer children good playgrounds. So please respect and use them in the best way. Use the risk assessment and the experience that is in them, but you have also to be very critical. It's up to you to make the choice of how much risk and challenge you want to offer. That's a risk-benefit assessment, and it's up to you, each one of you, to decide how far are you ready to go and take the responsibility for. Thank you.